Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just got into the big time stretches for the Big Four teams going into this year, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon, and kind of decided where their stretch is going to be, where they become a big time championship contender and don't just become a team that has championship aspirations but hasn't realized them yet. So definitely will be really interesting to watch that unfold, but let's get into the ACC here and give some hot takes for the conference contenders in that conference. Frankly, I think there's a number of conference contenders technically, but only about 6 teams that I would really give a genuine shot to win this conference this upcoming year. So I have 6 for you today, and we'll break down this. And I'll start with Florida State. And this is one that I've gone back and forth on probably a million times throughout this offseason. Florida State has been one of the more confusing teams in my trying to get ready for the season. I can't figure out how good Florida State is going to be this year, but I'm going to roll with Florida State's portal moves will just not be enough to win an ACC title. It might be enough to get there, but I don't think this team has the guys that are going to make the big-time plays that you saw in the past. So I've kind of unpacked this a little bit before, but my main worry is DJ. I don't think that necessarily he's going to make the championship quote-unquote plays that need to be made that Jordan Travis absolutely was capable of making. So I've said this kind of analogy, but I think in the past they've been able to get A-plus transfers. They've been able to get A transfers. I think this cycle they got B-plus, maybe B transfers. And they're not bad players by any means, and they have plenty of really, really fabulous players on this team. But at the end of the day, I don't think, Keon Coleman I don't think Malik Benson is Keon Coleman. I don't think Roydell Williams is Trey Benson. So it's kind of one of those battles back and forth where I don't really know how good this team is going to be. I don't really know how well these guys are going to fit together, and I think they have plenty of talent, but at the end of the day, someone has to make those big time winning plays, and maybe it's Hakeem Williams on the outside. Maybe the defense is so good that they don't really have to worry about too much stuff offensively, but overall, I just don't necessarily see those big time plays and those championship level plays being made by the group that they brought in, and particularly at the quarterback position, because what Jordan Travis did was open up this offense to insane amounts because of his running ability. DJ brings that a little bit, but not nearly to the same level of Jordan Travis, and I think that was as big of a part of Florida State's success on offense as really anything last year. So I think that's the biggest worry that I have. So I think this is a remarkable team. I think they have so many things going in the right direction, and I think they brought in a lot of good players. I just don't think they're championship level good. So I think they're going to be on the other side of that ACC title game and not necessarily be on the winning side this time around. But it'll be very interesting to watch and are definitely one of those teams that are really hard to peg down going into this year. But let's move on to Clemson here, and I want to get in. Oh, excuse me. I apologize for that. I want to get into Bryant Wesco because I think this is going to be the leading receiver on this team this upcoming year. I understand that Clemson, has some experienced guys, Tyler Moore being the main among them, that I think can make some noise, but I think there's difference makers on this team at wide receiver, and they're both freshmen. I think it's Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore are just a cut above athletically of some of these other guys. Tyler Brown is kind of on that level as well, but overall, I think this is a group that absolutely can be really good, and I think it almost has to be led by the young guys if it's going to be that way because they play at a different level than some of these other guys do. So it might take them a little bit of time to get going. It might not necessarily be the smoothest transition into things, especially playing Georgia that first week of the season, but overall, I think this is a team that is a little bit more dangerous than some people are giving him credit for, partly because not a lot of people like to give Dabo Swinney any credit, but that's beside the point. I do think this is a team that has a lot of ability on the outside, and I think Bryant Wesco is one of those guys that can really open up this offense. And although he's a freshman, can definitely be a big-time player, and they might just need him to be if they're going to make the noise that they want to make this upcoming season. So I really expect this guy to be the leading receiver on the team, and I expect him to be one of the better receivers we've seen come through Clemson in quite some time over the next couple of years. But let's move on to Miami here and break down Ruben Bain. I think he's going to lead the Power Four in sacks. I think he is that good of a player. Obviously, there's usually a group of 5 guy that goes for like 16 and a half or something absolutely crazy. So I'm not necessarily ready to say he's going to lead FBS in sacks, but he might be close. I think when you look at this conference, there's not an offensive tackle that I can see at least that can really handle this guy for 4 quarters. So that can absolutely match up with this guy without doubt going into this next little bit. So I think it'll be really, really interesting to watch. And I think when you look into all of the different things that can happen around this season, this is a really, really dangerous player and one of those guys that, yeah, he's on the defensive side of the ball, but he can turn over this entire conference. He's coming off a 7.5 sack year, and a year where he was a freshman, and a year where he faced some better offensive tackles, and in the year where he didn't have a guy across from him like Elijah Alston that's going to be scary for offensive tackles in his own right. So I think he's going to get more one-on-ones, and I don't think there's a one-on-one where he cannot win. So Ruben Bain is one of those players that I think is on that level of a James Pierce Jr., a Michael Williams, a Jack Sawyer. He's just a little bit younger. That's the only difference between those two guys, and I think he's someone that can be an elite pass rusher and against some O-lines that might not be, at the elite level that they need to be to contain a guy like that. So I think he's going to be an absolute game wrecker, and I think he's the most important player on this team that is not named Cam Ward. I feel pretty confident in that, and if he can, do this and lead the Power 4 in sacks, you might just find Miami in the playoff, and that will be just incredible to watch this guy go up against some of the SEC and Big Ten tackles that are definitely a little bit higher level, but it'll be fascinating to watch if he can still dominate those guys all the same. But let's move on to Virginia Tech here, and I think they're going to finish this regular season 10-2 or better. And then when I look at this season, this isn't that crazy of a take, frankly. There's that Miami and Clemson game. Other than that, they have every single game should be not necessarily easy to win, but they should be favored by maybe even double digits in most of these games. The two other games that I'm watching pretty closely are Rutgers and Georgia Tech, but at the end of the day, both of those games should be wins. Both of those games should not really be huge issues for Virginia Tech, and that opens up a very interesting door where they do have to go down to Miami, and say you lose that game. That's all well and good, but you walk into that Clemson game with one loss, or hypothetically, if you beat Miami, you walk in undefeated. That place is going to be on fire, and there's going to be ACC title implications. There are going to be college football playoff implications. You could even punch your ticket to the ACC title and maybe the playoff on that day if you were able to beat Clemson. So I think this is one of those teams and programs that has been sitting dormant just for a little bit here, but absolutely has a lot of big things going on in 2024 and can be one of those teams that can make some noise in this conference and win an ACC title and get into the playoff and maybe knock off some teams while they're there. But it all starts with the regular season, and frankly, I think they're going to have just a really, really remarkable one this upcoming year. So really awesome to watch that team, and just cannot wait to watch Kyron Drones go to work, that's for sure. And then we have Noah Rogers and North Carolina State, and that's a team that has been really, really interesting here, but I think Noah Rogers is going to lead this team in receptions, and this is a little bit of cheating, I'm not going to lie, because I would go with receiving yards, but Kevin Concepcion absolutely has like a 200-yard, 250-yard game in him this year, so I don't necessarily feel too good about that, so I don't necessarily want to say that. I think it's going to be one of those things where you now have a counterpunch. You now have a guy that you can't just worry about number 10 on the field. You got to find number 5 as well, and I think he's one of those guys that can be a third down option, can be that middle of the field option for Grayson McCall, where he's really succeeded in the past, and he's had really good players. And Grayson McCall as well goes to the tight end a ton. Justin Jolie coming over from UConn is going to be huge. Kind of that Isaiah Likely connection is what they're hoping for down there, and I think it'll be really interesting to watch, but Noah Rogers, to me, is one of the biggest pickups in the portal for really any team across the country this year, because I think it totally changes this offense's complexion. I think it makes them a lot more dangerous, makes them not as, gimmicky, not as, gadget play oriented with Kevin Concepcion. You have a real, complete receiver that absolutely can make every play. Kevin Concepcion is plenty complete, not to say he's not, but I definitely think it opens so many different doors and takes some of the attention off Concepcion, where you can use him in handoffs, you can use him in jet sweeps, end arounds, what have you, and be really, really dangerous with that guy on the edge. So I think he's someone that maybe won't have, big time chunk plays. Maybe he doesn't make that 50-yard catch down the field like Kevin Concepcion can make, but he's going to make maybe 5 catches to get them in position to make that play. Or he's going to make that 5-yard catch that you absolutely need on a third down. So I think he's one of those guys that has been at Ohio State, so he's been a little bit under the radar because so many good wide receivers just roll in and out of that place. But I think NC State is a fantastic place for him to just really open up his college football career and be a really dangerous player. So I think he's someone that I absolutely love going into the ACC, and he's someone that can really make this team an ACC contender and possibly even win the conference for them because of how dangerous he is and just because of how complete he makes this offense look. So I really like this player. I really like this team, and I think it's one of those that the passing attack used to always be Kevin Concepcion and then live with whatever else happens. That's not going to be the case this year. You're going to have a number of different targets, and I think Noah Rogers might just get the majority of those targets this upcoming year. So it'll be really interesting to watch all of those kind of unfold because the ACC is one of those conferences where I circle these 6 teams as the teams that really have a shot in this conference, but doesn't necessarily mean this is the end-all be-all. Oh, it's only 5 teams. Excuse me. The 5 teams that I really circle in this conference, but definitely some other teams that could make some noise and make me look a little bit goofy for not putting them in this segment. But at the end of the day, it'll be really interesting to watch that unfold. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all of the social pages for all of the content and updates you could possibly need. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.